may seem, it was only in my dream. No, 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 only in my dreams. As real as it may seem, it was only in my dreams.
Debbie Gibson grew up in Merrick and, while attending Calhoun High School, performed in clubs for a year to get her first single, Only in My Dreams, off the ground. Her debut album produced a string of hits, including Shake Your Love, Out of the Blue, and her first #1, Foolish Beat. That song put her in the Guinness Book of World Records as the youngest artist to write, produce, and perform a #1 hit on the Billboard Charts. She is still the youngest female to date to hold that record.
Like I did when I left you, and when we said goodbye, for the look in your eyes.
Debbie empowered a generation with her follow-up #1 album, Electric Youth, and her second #1 record, Lost in Your Eyes. ASCAP's Songwriter of the Year award followed and firmly cemented her place in pop music history.
In your eyes, and I feel my spirits rise.
Debbie then made her Broadway debut as Eponine in Les Miserables, broke box office records in London's West End production of Grease, wowed the critics as Belle in Disney's Beauty and the Beast, and tackled the gritty role of Sally Bowles in Cabaret, co-starring alongside Neil Patrick Harris.
Don't tell mama, shush up. Don't tell mama, don't tell mama. I tell you to. Baby, I'm now a regular child. Won't be a now a regular child. And I
Combining her two passions, she created her own one-woman show, Pop Goes Broadway, in Atlantic City, and had audiences and critics alike cheering. Debbie mentors the new generation of songwriters and performers through her Electric Youth boot camps and composes music for film and television. The song Rise from the Dr. Rutledge documentary 3 Billion and Counting was shortlisted for an Academy Award nomination. Debbie Gibson has sold over 16 million albums to date and continues to tour the world and release new music.
So with no further ado, please welcome Debbie Gibson.
That was a thorough intro.
Wow, amazing.
Thank you.
So we have a lot of people here. We have some Deb heads here.
Yes.
Hi, Deb heads. All here celebrating several things, one of which is the 30th anniversary of a special release.
I mean, I feel like it's the 30th anniversary of everything right now. I'm like, which release is it right now? I think Foolish Beat just just celebrated its
30th.
number one, and
30th anniversary of the number one record.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about an amazing movie project that you have coming up very
Yep.
soon. Our friends from Hallmark are here.
Yes, they are.
So we have
Hallmark
a lot
in
of
the house.
friends in the building tonight. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Rock and Roll High School.
Woo!
So for those of you who are new here and are joining us for the first time, what we do is, as a service generally to the employees of the Warner Music Group, is we do a class, usually around once a month, where we invite figures from the history of contemporary music to talk about their experiences, past, present, and future musically. And sometimes, like tonight, we got lucky where not only can we talk about an amazing musical career, past, present, and future, but also talk about how that career started and had so much success right here at Atlantic Records. So thank you for that.
Yes, thank you.
So,
Thank you, Atlantic.
so, wait, prop alert. So
me to
I
hold that
just
for a
got a
second?
gift. Look at this beautiful, here it is. This beautiful box set of 30 years of music, starting in the beginning until now. But it's absolutely gorgeous, and I had to bring it down here. It's definitely a must-have collector's piece for any fan of yours.
They all have it, trust me.
There
They
you
all
go.
they definitely
Okay,
have it.
Very good. So before we really get going, very, very important question.
Yes.
Could be the most important question of the evening.
Yes. I'm ready.
Debbie, or Deborah?
Okay, here's how it went down. And we just had this funny conversation in your office, which was, the powers that be at the time, who I guess they were trying to create my name here at Atlantic. They were going to give me the one-hit wonder dance name. It was going to be Debbie G. And I said, no, I can't do that. You guys, it's going to go beyond the first single. Trust me. I'm going to make sure of it. Let's give me a last name. How about even use my own? So growing up, friends and family called me Deborah or Deb. Debbie Gibson seemed to have that stage name kind of ring to it, so that's what we went with.
And today?
It's come full circle because I went through the Broadway Deborah phase just because Deborah it just felt like my name. It was very weird introducing myself to people by a name that I hadn't used for the first 16 years of my life. But it got too confusing, and everyone said, oh, you're so sophisticated now. It's Deborah. And I said, no, I'm still not sophisticated. So we went back to Debbie. I felt like, I built this brand name. We should just keep it. I embrace it now. Everyone embraced it for so many years. So it's full circle to Debbie.
Got it. So welcome, Debbie.
Thank you.
So let's talk about Wedding of Dreams to start.
Yes.
So September 8th, airing on the Hallmark Channel. The movie is about someone who leaves their singing career
Yep.
to become a music teacher at an Ohio high school. How real life is this? I know you're a singer, but not really sure about the Ohio high school part. So fill us in.
Right. Not sure about that, although I do mentor kids in my spare time. In fact, where's Jackie? There's a little girl here named Jackie Romeo. There's Jackie.
Hi, Jackie.
This little girl, I say little girl, she's a teenager, sings like, I don't even, I gave her Where the Boys Are at my workshop, my last workshop, because I thought she had kind of that throwback, cool sound. But I do love working with young people in my downtime. But I created this character loosely based on myself, and as if my life had gone really horribly awry. Dropped by the label, dropped by the boyfriend, no money, what am I going to do? So I go and seek out my estranged sister in Youngstown, Ohio. I happened to be doing a symphony date in Youngstown and was like, where am I? Where is this? Let's set a movie here. So we did. So it's Youngstown by way of Vancouver, which is where we shot it.
I thought Youngstown had a very Canadian air to it.
Yes, it did, and
Yeah.
rolling hills and mountains, and yes. But yes, Vancouver can be made to look like anything, so I've found out. But the thing that I connect to in this movie, and especially the sequel, so Summer of Dreams came out 2 years ago, and it was named Summer of Dreams for Only in My Dreams, which was featured in the movie. And I got to also write new music for the movie as well as for this one. And I love that about Hallmark, and I'm not just saying that because Samantha's here, who basically single-handedly made my movie. But they love taking talent. Like Leanne Rimes just did a movie for them, and Mariah and Kelly Pickler. And they love taking, especially women, and saying, bring all of yourself to the party. Bring your music, bring your personality, bring a piece of your real life. And I think that's what connects, I feel like that's what connected my music to people to begin with. It was really authentically me, and my clothes I wore were authentically me. And I think that's, with this movie, that's what connects people. And in the end, it's really about a woman's struggle to juggle career, personal life, and that you can find new passions along the way. You can have this big life and these big aspirations, but you can find maybe even more gratification in passing the torch to a young performer.
Totally.
So, yeah.
So in the film, your character is named Debbie Taylor.
Yes.
But Debbie Taylor's hits
Or
from
Debbie
the past
Gibson's
are
hits.
Debbie Gibson's hits.
Yes.
And what I thought was interesting in the film is there's definitely a "where are they now" subtext
Right.
to a lot of what goes on early on in the film.
Yes.
Has that ever been an issue for you when you have success so young? Do you have to worry about later in life having to answer the same questions over and over again? Whatever happened to where
Yes.
you're like, I've been here the whole time. I'm on Broadway. I'm on
Right.
TV.
Right, someone would literally come backstage after I just finished belting it out on Broadway for 3 hours and say, "Are you still singing?" And what they mean is, "Are you still making pop music and records?" So I understand that, yes, it's if you're not like thrust into the, pop culture world, and you're not on Entertainment Tonight every night or every week, people do wonder where you are, unless they're very up on your career. But I never really cared about that. I mean, even in the very beginning, I was like, wow, you know what? It's cool to be so public, but I didn't need it. I was very much excited to do my work to, I get teary every time I see like video footage like we just watched, and I'm running through the crowd at Wembley Stadium, and it's like, wait, this is my life. That was my life. And those moments meant so much more to me than being on a red carpet and having people know who I was, or, asking what outfit I was wearing, what designer I was wearing. So,
Because that's
I don't-
because people were responding to the music
Right.
and to your creation, and were literally reaching out to touch you
Right.
to get to that.
yes. And even now, if someone might start asking a string of questions, which leads to them trying to put together, even if I say one of the song titles, they go, "Oh, I know that song." And it's almost like a mother and the songs are my babies. It's like, I don't care if you know me. I'm thrilled you know the songs.
100%.
So,
So has acting always been a passion of yours?
Yeah,
Because
I mean-
obviously the Broadway credits speak for themselves.
yeah, I was the kid that wanted to be Annie, and lined up in the cattle calls where they closed the streets down. And I remember my grandpa getting nearly trampled to save me a spot in line, and then my mom and I would come after school and look for him. And so yeah, it was always a passion to be on stage. Once I started writing songs, though, and I wrote my first song at 5, but then I didn't really write anything till I was about 11. And when I started writing, and I would play a new song for the family in the living room, I just remember thinking, this is so exciting that I'm about to play something that no one's ever heard. And I get to be the messenger for this song. And once that started happening, I was like, I could put my acting and theater aspirations on hold for a bit. I knew that was kind of the be-all, end-all for me.
Is it true that you wrote an opera in 5th grade?
I wrote something called Alice in Operaland because I was performing at the Metropolitan Opera in the children's chorus, and kids were making fun of me. "Oh, Figaro, Figaro, oh, she's going off to the opera." And I was like, they don't know how cool the opera is. It's really, I mean, I still remember, Parbignol, Echo Parbignol, 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 da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I remember that stuff from when I was like 8. It stays with you, and it's amazing. And I wanted to introduce other kids to opera, so I had Alice doing the recitative, wandering around, and she would encounter these different principals from different operas, and they would sing their aria.
And was that ever performed?
It was just a project. I was in a creative program, and I just did a performance of it for like, for an analysis to get a grade, really. And it was never performed, and I've thought about it, and I don't even have it. I feel like the school has it, the teacher has it, somebody.
Maybe one of the Deb heads has it.
Yes, probably. They know more about my life than I do anyway, so they might.
But some of the big parts on Broadway, Eponine and Les Mis, Sandy and Grease, Belle and Beauty and the Beast, Sally Bowles' Cabaret, like all massive parts, either Broadway or West End. That's, as high profile as it gets.
Yes, that was intense. I had auditioned for Les Mis when I was 15, and it was the last thing I auditioned for before getting my deal here at Atlantic. And it was always my goal to get signed by my 16th birthday. And I got signed about a week after. And I said to the creative team of Les Mis in a very precocious way, you guys better get me now. I'm going to be a big recording star next year. And they were like, okay, thank you. Next. But I actually got called back at the time 3 times for Eponine. And when I started performing the song in my concerts at 21, my mom, who was one of the original momagers, Diane Gibson, she probably has a picture up here in these hallways somewhere or something. But she was kind of infamous. She would sit around the conference tables with all males at the time, all males in suits, and pound her hands on the table and say, no, I want my daughter to produce this record. And they'd say, well, what has she ever produced? And she'd break out the demos. Well, she produced a demo of it in our garage. But she got me that moment, But she had called the creative team of Les Mis and said, you really need to come see how this teen pop audience is responding to this musical. And when I got off that tour, I auditioned again. They still made me... People think they hand out Broadway roles. 90% of the time, they don't. They still bring you in and you audition and you sing through the highs and lows of the score, and they make sure you could do it 8 times a week. I got the role, and it was amazing.
You've also done national tours as well.
I have. I've always loved touring theater. And what's so funny is when you mention the Where Are They Now thing, people always had this attitude of like, oh, she's resorting to doing touring theater. The career's not going well. What people don't know is I've actually picked tours over Broadway productions before because I was like, well, I'm promoting a record. I want to get around and see everyone out there in America. This is a great way to do it. I get to do what I love 8 times a week. I get to promote my record. I've always loved the idea that you could bring a Broadway caliber show to people all over America. So I've done a lot of tours. I've spent up to 9 months straight on the road.
Do you have a favorite show that either you've done or you haven't done? Just a favorite
Ooh,
musical?
it's so tough. I mean, Cabaret, which you guys saw the clip of, was kind of, I campaigned quietly for that role, and I even went and auditioned for shows I necessarily didn't want to do, but I knew the right people were in the room that would eventually call me for that. And it happened, so I was so honored to do that show. So that was definitely a favorite.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So now let's go back to the beginning.
Okay.
So when I think of you, before we've started to get to know each other, and I know I was wrong, but when I think of you, I think of Long Island. I think of you were the girl who grew up on Long Island, but you were actually born in Brooklyn.
I was born in Brooklyn, though I was only there till I was 2, Bensonhurst. But, there's still old Italian relatives scattered around there. I get pictures of is it St. Joseph's Day, or, the table is set beautifully with the lace tablecloth. And we're like old school Italian, my family. And you're going to go, where'd the name Gibson come from? But my dad was an orphan, and his origins are kind of unknown. I know I've got several nationalities from his side, but I grew up with the Italians. But yeah, I grew up on Long Island. Merrick, great place to grow up. Great place for the arts, Long Island. Yes.
What is your first musical memory growing up on Long Island?
Ooh. I mean, really, it was in my house because my parents were big music fans, and my dad was in a barbershop quartet called the Peanuts. He was in a foster care home for boys. There were 100 boys in the home, and 4 of them formed a quartet. And a guy named Brother Frank Springman, was like the leader of this group. And so my dad had a great natural singing voice, still does. you guys saw the videos I posted last year of he and I at the piano, and we're singing My Way, and he just goes, My Way, and he goes for the high note, and I go, how'd you do that? He goes, I don't know, I just opened my mouth and I went for it. And I'm like, I wish singing was that easy to me. It's never been that easy to me. Like, he's amazing. And my mom was just always a big music fan. So I remember they got a piano before they got a couch, thinking, you know what? We're going to eventually find the money for a couch, but we might not find the money for a piano. So they got the piano. And I remember running down to my sister's room, listening to Billy Don't Be a Hero on the piano and running back. I mean, listening on the record and then running back and picking it out on the piano.
And you were able to play it
Yes, by
just
ear.
by ear. What other music do you remember listening around the house back then?
A lot of Motown. And I remember planting myself in front of the TV and watching Lawrence Welk, Donnie and Marie. Liberace was my very first live concert at Westbury Music Fair, and
Lucky you.
I now own one of his all glass and mirrored pianos.
Nice.
Yes, I always loved him. And Billy Joel and Elton John were always favorites of mine, and I saw Billy Joel in concert when I was about, I think, 8 or 9.
So obviously, growing up on Long Island, writing your own songs, playing piano, Billy Joel, check the box, check the box, check
Yes.
the box. So was he a big influence on your music as well?
Huge. I mean, it's not that you listen to my music and you go, wow, I can hear Billy Joel in it, but just the fact that he was writing, playing. We sought out his piano teacher. I went and studied with his piano teacher, Morton Estrin, in Hicksville. And I just was enamored with his whole thing.
What was it like when you finally got to perform with him?
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. So I went to see Elton John in concert, and Elton was, my other favorite piano man. And so I went to Madison Square Garden to see them in concert and went backstage. And Elton's like a walking encyclopedia of everything that's going on in the charts. And he was like, oh, I think you're on number 17 this week, aren't you? And I was like, what? Excuse me? And he said, do you want to, you play by ear, don't you? I said, yeah. He said, do you want to come up and do a number with Billy and I? I said, twist my arm. Yes, that's enough. So I ended up on stage that night with Billy and Elton doing Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, and it was insane. I was, and then the next week I saw Billy at Nassau Coliseum, and a crew member came out and grabbed me before the encore, and the same thing happened, and I ended up on stage with him that weekend. So
What song was
that
that?
was wild. That was Keeping the Faith.
Wow.
Yeah. And he said, you take my piano down center, and he took the keyboard up
Wow.
stage. Yes.
So nice.
So wild. So wild.
Talk about bucket list.
I know.
So with the piano's in the house, no couch yet.
Right.
So we're all playing the piano and sitting on the piano, but no couch.
We're sitting Indian style on the floor, yes, cross-legged.
What is the first song that you remember writing?
The first song was, you guys could probably sing it with me. Make sure you know your classroom. Make sure you know your seat. I'll help you find your teacher. I hope she looks so sweet. Bum, bum, bum. Then repeat the first 3 lines, and the last line is, or you'll have to wait in the street. I guess about my deep hidden fears about if you don't know where your classroom is, you're out.
And how old were you when you wrote that?
I was 5. I was 5. And I'd
Pretty
go
different.
in and I'd play it for the class, and they'd be kind of like, I don't know, it just didn't go over so well. I was just excited to share it with them. But, kids. Kids.
And then
5-year-olds.
what was the first song you remember writing where you said, oh, this could actually really be something? To have the confidence to go into a Les Mis audition and say, yo, Les Mis casting people, tick, tick, tick. I'm going places, either with you or without you. When did you know that, hey, this song, this could actually be something?
I didn't think that this song could be something, but I knew that it sounded like a song. I wrote this, everybody sing that music, everybody sing that song, if we all sing together. It was called So Sweet the Music, and I used to do it at, it's funny, Holly Robinson Peete, who's now a Hallmark gal, she used to be a singing waitress at this place called Something Different in New York City, and I was one of the kids that would sing for a hot pecan pie at the end of the show. It was like a dessert nightclub showcase for kids. And I used to get to do my songs there. And so that song, I felt like, hey, I have a song. and it sounded a little bit like a, I don't know, McDonald's commercial or something, but it was a song, top to bottom. But I remember writing Only in My Dreams and saying, it was the first time I said, I want to write a pop hit. Like, I want to write something that could be on the radio. And I started with a beat. I had a Lynn drum machine, and I came up with the beat. And I wrote Only in My Dreams to that beat. And I remember thinking, yeah, this could be on the radio.
Wow.
And I was 13.
You wrote Only in My Dreams when you were 13?
Yeah, yep.
So let's talk about the journey of that song, the evolution from the Lynn piano, from you writing that song at 13.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time it became a massive worldwide hit, it was a few years later.
Yep.
So talk us through the journey of that song once you created it.
So I was writing and demoing about a song a day. And
All while going to school.
all while going to school. I'd come home after school. I'd say to my mom, leave my plate of food outside the door. And it was the garage, which then became a playroom, which then became my studio, which didn't go over that well with my three sisters. But yeah, so that was the studio. I remember my younger sister, Denise, who is so funny. She's got just a dry sense of humor. And her bedroom is right above the studio. And she was like, did I hear you doing a new song like Shake Your Love or something last night? I thought I heard that like 80,000 times in my sleep. It was just Shake Your Love, Shake Your Love. And she's, on her bed. But we digress. So Only in My Dreams, it was one of a batch of like 100 songs that, people forget back then teenagers weren't getting signed. Now I just ran into that young gal in the hall upstairs who is a new artist on the label, and I'm like, everybody's 15 now, or 15 might even be old now. I don't know. But back then it wasn't the case. So, I had an entertainment attorney shopping the demos for me that I was making in the garage. And I had rejection letters from Sony and from everybody. And I think I had one from Atlantic, but we went back. And he somehow made his way into the dance department. And we actually invited Bruce Carbone tonight.
Where's Carbone?
Bruce?
Hi, Bruce.
Hey, Bruce.
Bruce
So-
is part of this story.
Yes.
So happy
Bruce,
to see
this
you.
is your chapter. Yes. I mean, it's just, I remember it so vividly. It was Larry Asgar, Bruce Carbone, and Anthony Sanfilippo in a back office with no windows and 12-inch singles, most of them with just labels, no pictures or anything, no
So
artwork.
this was the dance promotion department.
This is the dance department, the club. Yes.
And so, Bruce, did you guys sign the record, or was the record signed by? You signed the record and then worked the record yourselves.
Yep. I figured it out. Make it and promote it.
Right. And it's like, and you remember my mom very well. My mom and I had the same philosophy where we're like, okay, there's a piece of vinyl, it's real, we can do something with it. And then she went and got a club booking agent, and we had a few of them at the time, kind of freelance, and I would play a teen club, a straight club, and a gay club all in the same night. I would change in the car. I do like a 30-minute set of 3 songs. They were the extended remixes, and the dancers and I were doing our thing. And
Did you like to dance?
I did like to dance. I was an awkward dancer. Like, I wasn't really a dancer, but I liked to move. I liked to
Usually
sweat.
it's one or the other. You're either the singer-songwriter or you're the dancer-performer who's recording other people's songs.
Right, and that's such a great point, because that was where sometimes the confusion came in, where people felt like, where execs would feel like, we have to hire someone to write your songs, right, because I was like, no, why can't I be behind the scenes of my own, like, pop creation of myself?
Right.
So I had that, and I think because I grew up in theater, you were supposed to know how to do everything. You were supposed to know how to sing, dance, act, play, read music, whatever you needed to do. And I just thought it was all fun, and I never wanted to do I still don't want to ever do a ballad until like 4th or 5th in the set. I want to dance off the nerves and then bring it down.
And get the energy going in the crowd, too.
Yeah. And I would start only in my dreams, because I sang live. I sang live to track, never lip synced. And I would do this, no, 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 no. I'm very hoarse tonight, but I would do only in my dreams. And I'd hold out the, it was only in my, as long as I could till I was blue in the face to get everyone's attention, because everyone's drinking and picking people up. And I wanted them to know I was singing live. So then I proceeded to do the show.
Well, it's interesting. We were talking earlier about this era in the late 80s. We were talking about all the artists, the female pop artists, when you say that some of the executives said you should be Debbie G.
Right.
There was Alicia, and there was Regina, and there was Tiffany, and there was all these, Stacey Q, and all these other people back then. But unless I'm mistaken, you were the only one who was not just co-writing your music, you were writing 100% of all of your hit songs. That's so rare even now. When you hear a song that's a hit on the radio, then you look at the credits. How did 17 people write this song?
Oh, I know.
They each took a word.
Right, I know.
You wrote
I wonder.
and co-produced
Yes.
every song that you ever had a hit.
Yeah, I mean, I've done co-writing sessions too, and they're really fun. And when you get with people that you spark with, what's fun about it is you go, wow, I never would have thought of this idea on my own. This idea is coming out of this very unique group of people. But I find I write my best when it's just like you're channeling. Like something comes to you and you're not thinking it. You're not running it by a committee. You're not putting it out in the room to see how it feels. It just either, it's coming through right onto the voice recorder or right into the notebook. Like Lost in Your Eyes for me was written in real time. It was real time. I mean, I sat at the piano and just ding, bing, ding, bing, and it just poured out. And I think I wonder what that would have been like if there was a room full of people saying, I think you should say if instead of but, or, because that's what
And I'll take
happens.
30% for that.
Right.
Where, obviously, when you're writing such big hit songs so young, you haven't really lived the life of a veteran songwriter. It's like, oh, that reminds me of this one time in Nam, So where did you get your inspiration from?
Well, I mean, I think you can hear it's like, it's all puppy love, really. And like a song like Foolish Beat, it's interesting because I have older sisters. And I watch them going through their breakups and everything. I mean, I remember writing a song, love starting again, but did it ever really end? Because my sister kept breaking up and getting back together with the same guy, so love starting again. And the ideas just came really from whatever version of love you have as a teenager, and you're kind of imitating what you've heard. I mean, I was very influenced by everything pop at the time. Madonna, Wham. I've loved George Michael forever, and Madonna just going. It was all just a little lonely. That little vocal inflection, that's her. I think anybody starting to sing at that time emulated her to a degree. So it was funny being an artist, but being in high school and so impressionable and influenced by all those people at the same time. So, yeah.
It's interesting when you think about Madonna. Madonna wrote some of her songs, but she also covered a lot of outside songs. Like a Virgin was an outside song. All of your hits were 100% written by you, and usually either produced or co-produced by you. Talk about that. When you're in the studio producing your own records, it's one thing to write. Then when you're going to turn this demo or this song into a record, what's that process like?
Well, I worked with a producer named Fred Czar, who actually was, he did the Papa Don't Preach keyboard string intro, was not credited. I mean, he was a brilliant keyboard guy, keyboard programmer. And he had a studio in Brooklyn in his basement. All of the vocals to all of my hits were cut in his vocal booth, which was his laundry room. There was an orange curtain across the washer and dryer, the washing machine and the dryer. And, it was so much fun. Fun times. But
Is that on Long Island, too?
that was Brooklyn. That was in Brooklyn. A lot of Brooklyn in my life. But yeah, so what would happen is I would get with Fred. I'd play him the demo. My demos, if you listen to a song from its demo stages to the finished product was always a polished version of the demo. And he was so brilliant at keeping that purity. He wanted to bring to life what I was hearing. My arrangements weren't as sophisticated as his. He was a way better player and a way better programmer. And I think, whether it's in movies or music or whatever, the key to being a great producer is hire people better than yourself and put the pieces together and just know how to communicate. And if you can communicate technically, musically, you just have to keep finding the adjectives to get out of people what you want to hear.
So the demos were not just piano vocal demos, they were produced.
They were produced. Yes, they were produced. They were programmed. Again, I had a Lynn rack mount sequencer. I'm sure there's a lot of young people back there from the label going, what?
Yeah, what's up?
You'll have to look it up.
Bruce Carbone will tell you. He's old enough to remember.
He knows. And the other crazy thing I was doing in that basement studio the garage studio was I was doing radio IDs for everybody around the country, and I was splicing my own tape.
Wow.
So I was doing I was going, Z100's got the music I thought was only in my dreams, and I was splicing it into the TV track.
That's probably something Andrea Gannis asked you to do.
Yes.
Would be
I am devastated that Andrea's not here.
She's on her way to the airport.
Of
She's like,
course.
oh, please tell Debbie.
She's
I said,
promoting.
yes.
It's amazing that she's still here.
There are always records to promote. That is
But yeah,
for sure.
I mean, it's like I could do a whole interview with you right now about how it's all changed, or if it's kind of still the same.
I'm sometimes a contrarian because I think that my personal philosophy is there's really never anything new. There's just a new spin on something that's already existed. So we were talking about Broadway earlier. When you were signed to Atlantic, and Atlantic was doing all the Frank Wildhorn stuff and Smokey Joe's Cafe, then Atlantic Broadway went quiet. And when we jumped back in a few years ago with Hamilton and Dear Evan Hansen and Greatest Showman, it was basically because, hey, it doesn't mean that nobody wants this just because it hasn't been happening.
Right.
They want it, they just don't know what they want it.
By the way, see, I had that conversation when I went into Les Mis because, quite honestly, a lot of the executives laughed at me and they said, you're killing your career by doing Broadway. And I sat at a conference table and I said, movie musicals are going to make a comeback, mark my words. And they all went, ha, 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 ha. And I saw the shoulders going up and down and everybody laughed at me. And I thought, what you just said, they don't know they want it, but does anyone ever switch the channel when Grease is on? I mean, even at that time, and I knew it. And I was like, God, I could be the person to help make Broadway hip, guys. Because it's not that I was like the hippest recording artist, but I could bridge that gap at the time. And now, obviously, we see all the recording artists doing the movie musicals, which just, makes my heart full. I love it. I love that it's crossed over. Because it's all one genre to me. It's different genres, but it's all entertainment and it's all art.
Totally.
And to me, it's all the same.
Music is to entertain and educate and
Move you and
help you get in touch with something inside. But at its root, it's entertainment. Somebody once said that the music business is recession-proof. This was a long time ago they said that. But they said, it was a music publisher who said that music is recession-proof because when someone is really happy, they want to listen to music and they'll go and pay money for it. When someone's really sad, they want to listen to music and they'll pay money for it.
that is a really good point.
So there you go.
Yes, that's a really good point.
Let's go back to the journey of Only in My Dreams.
Okay.
So we're now in the windowless back closet with Bruce Carbone and his buddies. Now, how did Atlantic hear it? Did a radio DJ play it for somebody at Atlantic? Do
No,
you
an
remember?
entertainment attorney.
Oh, it was Doug
walked it
who
in.
did it?
Yeah, yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
And then the original deal, was it just for one song?
It was not even, yes, and it was only to release it dance. It was to do the 12-inch. It was like a $5,000 deal. It was like, here, let's just, here's your $5,000 promotion budget and recording budget all in one. I mean, it was, very much, let's throw it up against the wall, see if it sticks. And I'd have to ask Bruce, but I mean, me and my mom were passionate about it. I know that. And we were up in that office a lot. And, I think we just all kind of got the machinery going. And
So at what point did someone with a window at Atlantic say, hey,
that's a great line.
at what
great.
point did people start seeing that, hey, maybe this is sticking to that wall?
Well, the deal was structured that if it went, I think it was top 10 dance, it would get released to pop radio. If it went top 5 at radio. Now, I now understand what a nearly impossible goal that was. But luckily I didn't know at that time, and I was a kid, and I was like, sure, I could have a top 5 hit. Ignorance was bliss. And we just kept going, and so it got a radio release. And then it was like, okay, now how do we get around the country and shake every DJ's hand? And we were on that mission and splicing the tape in the garage. And the deal was structured that if that went top 5, then there'd be a second single, and the same thing would happen all over again. But by the time Only in My Dreams was hitting, which, by the way, took 65 weeks.
Amazing.
From the time it was released to the time it went top 5. Then Doug Morris walked down the hall and shook my hand.
Introduced himself.
And said, yes. I mean, really, that's when I met him. And I would go into Doug and Ahmed's office with a brown paper lunch bag full of single cassettes and say, here's my album, and dump it on the desk. I never had an A&R person.
Were you still in high school?
I was in high school.
Were you homeschooled, or were you actually going to
No,
school
I
in
was like,
between club days?
I was stupidly attempting to go to school with the, saying, well, if I'm in regular school, then I'm normal, and I get to be normal. But it was the most abnormal experience ever, and it was torture. But I did it so that I could say that I did it. So here I am saying, I went to regular high school, everybody. Yes, thank you. Thank you.
So was that strange?
And I have a very good therapist to this day.
Nice.
Thank you. But yes, it was.
It must have been
it was
strange with the other kids when you're walking into class and they turn on the radio and your song is on.
Yes, yes. And I was oddly trying to blend in school. I really just wanted to be one of the gang. And kids really wanted to, now it would be called bullying. Because anytime I turned a corner, I didn't know what I was going to get and what someone was going to say or do. But I did learn, what I learned is that I could be shaking on the inside, because I always was. I was always on high alert, but that I'd speak up for myself. And it kind of gave me a backbone, or let me know that I had a backbone, and I would try to, if I heard someone say something around a corner, I'd say, I can hear you. Come around the corner and say it to my face, please. And then my heart's pounding out of my chest, So it was a unique experience.
Is it true that you went to your prom, but you told the DJ that he couldn't play any of your songs?
I think we did tell them. I say we, probably in advance. I don't think any of my songs got played at the prom. And the night of the junior prom, I performed, and a bunch of kids from my class came to the show. It was a New York show.
On your junior prom?
On my
That's
junior
awesome.
prom night.
So we're continuing the journey of Only in My Dreams. Ultimately, it gets to number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100.
Yep. Yay, Only in My Dreams. Yay.
When that happened, you were 17 years old.
Yeah.
Of a song, again, I cannot understate or overstate this, rather, a song that you wrote and wrote the lyrics, wrote the music, and co-produced.
That one I didn't co-produce. But yes.
You produced a great Lynn drum machine demo,
I
I'm
did.
sure.
I produced the heck out of the demo. Yes.
At
Yeah.
17 years old. So how surreal is that? Trying to be normal, going to school, and you've got the number 4 record on the Hot 100.
I mean, yes, it still is surreal. I mean, I still have a very big sense memory of being in that garage doing that demo. So like I'll be in Asia next month, and I'll be performing it to thousands of people who don't speak English but know the words to that song, and it just still
That song
completely blows my mind.
that you wrote when you were 13 years old.
Yes,
Amazing.
it's wild. It's wild.
Then, so now we need a second single, right? Bruce, you've picked up the option now for the second single. You're not sure if you're ready to commit to more.
I'm still in the office with no window.
Right.
I don't think you ever left that office as long as
I think
was
he's
there.
still in it.
I don't think
actually.
he's still in it.
So the next single was the song that drove your sister crazy, Shake Your Love.
Yes, yes. And I remember I wanted a song called Staying Together, which you guys know. And all the powers that be picked Shake Your Love, and I'd say they picked right. Yeah.
So Shake Your Love also eventually got to number 4 on the Hot 100. So you're still 17 years old. Were you saying to yourself, this is easy?
You know, it's weird. I don't think I wasn't saying anything to myself. I was just working. I was just like laser focused working. And because it wasn't like it is now where things move very quickly, it was like I would wait for that Billboard call. Where's Gary? Gary Trust is here somewhere. There he is.
Hi,
I would
Gary.
wait for that Billboard call every week.
It wasn't from Gary back then.
It wasn't from Gary, but no, but you know, it would be that, you know, it's number 72 with a bullet. You know, it's number 68 with a bullet. I mean, it moved slow back then with no internet.
But how awesome was that?
It was
because
awesome.
the suspense that was building up every week. Now,
yeah.
you know, you can get any type of information anytime, anywhere, and it might not be as fun as it used to be.
No, that was really fun. Like
Torture, but
torturous,
fun.
right? Torturous but fun. Yeah, it was really fun, and yes.
So now, with 2 massive top 5 smashes under your belt, I would imagine at some point Doug says, let's make an album.
Yes.
And that
In
album...
6 weeks. Let's make an album in 6
6
weeks to capitalize on the hoopla that's going on.
So that album became Out of the Blue. Mm-hmm. And in the meantime, you said you were writing a song a day.
Yeah.
So you probably had a lot to choose from.
Yeah.
Did you choose all the songs with Fred for your album, or did the label get involved?
Pretty
What
much it
like?
was like me, my mom, Fred. I don't remember. I mean, I don't think the label got that involved in picking those songs. I think as much as everybody was excited by the success, it was still kind of like, is this a fluke? That was the feeling I always got. Like, well, hey, she did this with these 2 songs. Let's see if she could do it again. And that was the feeling on that first album. But I think they trusted my instincts. I think they got that a young girl knew what essentially, you know, other teenagers wanted to hear, which was a great thing. Like I said, there was nobody A&Ring my record, which I never realized what that meant until later. You know, again, it was so pure. Nobody was picking apart a bridge or asking me to change lyrics. I mean, those were exactly as I wrote them.
And Doug and Amit never got involved listening and making suggestions?
No,
asking questions?
later they did. Later they did, but not then.
What about the artwork for the album?
Oh, that fabulous artwork and haircut. By the way, that haircut happened because they wanted me to look older in the beginning because they didn't want people to know I was a teenager. So like that Only in My Dreams single artwork, I look, I think, older than I look now. You know, with that crazy hair. And that was like that hair growing out. And I was into teddy bears. And the photographer said, you know, your knee is pulling focus. And the makeup artist said, oh, why don't I paint a face on it? And so all that stuff happened. I mean, and then, you know, little girls came to the concert with the face on their knee, and it became a thing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So the next single was Out of the Blue. Mm-hmm. That got higher than the first 2, peaked at number 3.
Yep.
And the next one, Foolish Beat, peaked at number 1.
Yes.
And which is amazing because usually you peak high and then fall off. But here you went 4, 4, 3, 1.
Yep.
And then when Foolish Beat went to 1, becoming your first Billboard number 1, it set a record for the youngest artist ever to have written, produced, and perform a Billboard number 1 single. And if you don't believe me, it's in the Guinness Book of World Records. Or
Yeah.
look behind us.
Yeah, and you know, I always felt like ballads were the easiest to produce because I always said they produce themselves. You have to just get out of the way and
Were you still recording?
feature the song.
Were you still recording in Fred's studio?
I was. I was.
So when you look at this is the Hot 100 for June 25th, 1988. And you see your name is on top of Michael Jackson's name.
Crazy. And by the way, I was obsessed with that too, with the Billboard charts, of seeing who I was sandwiched between week to week. Because again, I mean, these were concerts I was going to and posters that were on my wall. And
But look at this for a second. Michael Jackson, Dirty Diana, written by Michael Jackson, produced by Quincy Jones.
crazy.
Together Forever, not written or produced by Rick Astley. The Jets, Cheap Trick, didn't even write The Flame, produced by somebody else. But here you are with your name both in parentheses and not parentheses, meaning that you were the producer and the songwriter of the #1 song.
Pretty wild. Pretty wild.
17
Thank you.
years old.
Thank you.
So the album, certified 3 times platinum in America and worldwide, has now sold over 5 million copies. You know, we can keep saying, amazing, unbelievable, awesome. But it really is to think about that.
Well, what's crazy is, you know, it was a really grassroots story. I mean, there was no, people go like, how'd you get your break? And it's like, there was no one moment. It was just, it's like a good old-fashioned American dream hard work story that we had. We didn't know anybody special. We didn't do anything special. My dad was working for TWA Airlines, and he was stuffing all the mailboxes with the request lines for the New York area radio stations. I mean, it was just very grassroots.
So that's it. That's how, now we know how it happened. It was all the TWA.
It was
phone
Joe
calls.
Gibson, yes. But I also thought about that. I always thought, if you can get it requested, if you can get it played, if people hear it, they're going to like it. But they have to hear it. And I guess that's still the trick. How do you cut through, and I'm going to ask you that now, how do you cut through all the noise now with a record? Because
The trickiest
There's so
thing
much.
for an A&R person, and Bruce, you can chime in on this as well, but the trickiest thing for an A&R person is Bruce and I, for those of you who don't know me, I run A&R at Atlantic, and I've been doing A&R for 30 years, so I've been in a position to work with a lot of incredible artists and be in the studio making a lot of records. I think at this point, we know pretty much how to help our artists achieve what they want to do and make a really good record. Then, sometimes that's the easy part. Trying to get it out there and cut through the noise so that people know it, hear it, and understand how good it is versus the 10,000 other things
and by
that
the way,
are
there's
flying
so
around.
many great artists right now. Like, I think there were less when I started. I mean, we didn't have all of the outreach of, influences on the internet that we could tap into and hear, like Jackie does. Like, Jackie, you can hear people from every single generation and be influenced by them with your voice. And you can hear, like, everyone from Janis Joplin to, current artists in this little girl's voice. And we just were limited to our Donnie and Marie on Friday night or whatever it was.
But
And
you
so
were
there's a
still
lot of great artists.
in listening to Elton John and Billy Joel, and I'm not sure if you listen to Carole King.
I
or,
did, yes. I
The
love
Carpenters, or like amazing music coming in the early to mid 70s that, again, I would say that people now who are influenced by such amazing things a generation ago might not have been omnipresent because you couldn't take out your phone. If you took out your phone, you would be ripping it off the wall, and then
Right,
if you were
right.
trying to find music in it, it would have to be somebody on the other end singing to you.
But I just feel like there's more music now. There's more artists. I watch The Voice and I watch Idol, and a lot of people go, oh, and I go, there's like a crazy amount of vocal talent out there. So
You judged which show? American
American
Juniors?
Juniors, yeah. That was a moment where it was like uncomfortable to watch young kids being judged on television, and it's not anymore. But at that moment, it was like,
'Cause you have
too
to be,
soon for that?
You have to be nice.
yeah. I mean, and you want to be nice and you want to be supportive. But yeah, that show at that time didn't fully work. But yeah, I just think there's a crazy amount of talent. So I just wonder, how artists get heard now.
Yeah, it's tough. But you have to have a lot of patience. But right.
Right.
But the label has to have the patience to be able to stay in a record and an artist's
That's what I was
career for a
gonna
really
ask.
long time. But again, even that is not new. If you said it took 65 weeks
Right.
for that song to go, we just, a couple of years ago, we had Jason Mraz, I'm Yours. 60 weeks to get all the way at radio. Ed Sheeran,
Unbelievable.
the A-Team, probably 70 weeks to go at radio. And
Wow.
there
Yeah,
would be,
people assume the week they hear it is the week
Right.
it all started.
and sometimes the label, has to take a deep breath and everybody say collectively, let's hold hands and we're going to stick in this record because we believe in it and we believe in this artist.
And is it like do you listen to music in a meeting and you hear something and instantly go, oh, we love that, we're in? I mean, is it like instantaneous, or what do you look for? I'm turning the interview around. What do you look
Bruce,
for in
get
a
up
hit
here.
these days, really? Because, I hear so many different things as a writer, because at certain times I try to get into the game as just a writer, and, you meet with publishers, and it seems so like beat-oriented and sound-oriented, and where's the song in all of that these days?
You're still listening for that. You're still listening for something that is going to elicit a genuine emotion, right? And I think that is the one thing that successful music will always have, as a through line, where I can play a piece of music for anyone in this room, and you're either going to say, that moved me, or you're going to stick up your middle finger, and it didn't, walk out of the room. So as A&R people, that's what we're listening for. Is this being said in such a new, unique way that I'm really interested in what this person has to say?
Well, you just touched on something. So Ahmet Ertegun, when he was alive, said to me, I had submitted a song to Anita Baker called In Blue. I guess he likes me in blue. That ended up on one of my albums. And he called me when he heard it and said, darling, that is what you need to be doing. He said, just what you said. You need to have that line. He said, when the sun comes up over Santa Monica Boulevard, that line made Sheryl Crow a star. He said, you have to listen. And it's funny, I heard the Dua Lipa New Rules today, and the line, if you're under him, you ain't getting over him. I said, Ahmet is smiling down from the heavens on that lyric, because he was very big on that twist. How can you say an old sentiment in a new way? A timeless.
I knew that song was a hit when my 17-year-old daughter came up to me and she was like, did you hear what she said?
That's a good gauge.
Right.
There you go.
That doesn't change either. It used to
Yep.
be, well, I can't play this loud enough. My parents will hear it.
Right.
Walk in
I
the room.
remember meeting Lionel Richie, and he said to me, you can hear a hit song on a tin can and a banjo.
That is true.
So it's good to hear you say that that's still true.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
still true. And the amazing thing about music is there are no rules. You just mentioned Lionel Richie. Do you know that Lionel Richie cannot read music? It's
Know that.
there are
Yeah,
no
I know
rules.
that. I know,
This
I
guy's
love
one
that
of the
about
greatest songwriters of all time. He can't read music.
Yep. No, I know. I have people, come and play in my live shows or whatever. Same thing. They go, I'm playing by ear, so if you need to transpose something, I can't do it on the spot, but give me a heads up, and I'll. Yeah, there's a lot of talent that just.
What are
plays
some of
by
the other
ear.
memories you have back then promoting the Out of the Blue album? Touring, shooting videos. Did you work with Paula Abdul on some of your videos?
I did. Paula Abdul choreographed the Shake Your Love video, and a lot of the choreography got kind of edited out. It was that kind of quick cut thing, but I did work with her on that.
Was that fun?
Yes, I love Paula. That was so much fun. And I'm trying to think. Oh my
So
goodness.
touring,
so
you
many.
were, when you were 17, 18, were you touring all over the world? Did you go to Asia? Did you go to Europe?
So I did promo tours all over the world. So like I did my first Japan trip when I was 17 and fell in love with Asia. Love Asia to this day. But I didn't do concerts there until the Electric Youth Tour. So that tour brought me all around the world. But I did the clubs, and then I did colleges, and then I did like the Jones Beach type theaters and amusement parks, and then Radio City, and then graduated up to Madison Square Garden, and again it was
What was that
it
like,
was
your
a build.
your first garden? What was that like?
That was amazing. That was amazing, and it's like you're trying to kind of psych yourself out to think it's just it's another stop on the tour. It's show 5 of the week, but it's Madison Square Garden, and everybody is there too. By the way, it's the biggest meet and greet you'll ever do in your life.
All the
Everybody's
bullies,
there.
bullies from high school were there.
All
Oh,
the
she was
bullies
my
from-
friend. Look.
Totally. Yes. People either, ended up loving me or hating me, and none of it had anything to do with the truth. And yes, exactly. The bullies were there, out in full force. And I remember doing the Atlantic 40th. I mean, that's a huge memory.
Who else was on that bill?
I sang in between Led Zeppelin and The Who.
Wow.
And I was wearing a little black dress and a denim jacket and had a scrunchie in my hair. And I remember knowing, and it's funny, when I got to play Funny Girl, like Fanny Bryce and Funny Girl, I related so much to understanding how you had to win over an audience. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to be the toughest audience ever. And so I didn't want to just do the dance stuff. I was like, I've got to sit at an instrument. I've got to sit at the piano. And, you know, it was live on HBO. They're not giving you an extra 3 minutes. I was kneeling on the edge of the stage in sound check, leaning over to the producer of the show saying, you've got to let me do Foolish Beat. I'm going to get booed off the stage if I'm just jumping around singing dance songs. Like, I've got to do a ballad. And they said, okay. And I got to do the ballad.
How many songs did you get to do?
I don't know. How many you guys?
Deb heads?
Do you know? Was it
3.
3? I was going to say 4. Was it 4? I think it was 4.
4 and Happy Birthday.
There you go.
Who would you sing Happy Birthday to? Atlantic?
To Atlantic.
Very nice.
Yes.
When's our birthday? Any Atlantic people know when it's coming up again? We can sing again. No, I don't know.
Oh, the Atlantic birthday. I don't know. I don't know when that is.
1947, but I don't know the date. So the
don't know.
concert was when? Deb
Right.
heads?
I don't know.
1987 or 1988?
80. I don't remember. I think it was 87. I think it was 87, but. Oh, 88. 88.
Bob Kaus would know. He was there.
You would know.
So while you're doing all this touring, shooting the videos, having the number ones, did you go to high school graduation? Did you graduate? Did you get the cap and gown?
I did. But I had to sign off. We had to sign an insurance waiver saying that if anyone got hurt because of press being there, that I was responsible. And my mom came to me in her true managerial way and said, you know, I'm going to spell out all the facts for you and then leave it to you. And I was like, oh, fine, nobody's going to get hurt. And I did not torture myself all through high school to not graduate with my class. So, yes, I graduated with my class.
With no
And then
injuries.
ran.
No injuries.
No injuries.
Thank God for that.
No injuries were sustained.
So let's get into the second album now, which was Electric Youth. Came out in January 1989.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a saying that you have your entire life to write your first album and then 6 weeks to write your second. Was that an issue for you if you had hundreds of songs?
No, this was basically still a lot of those songs that I'd written before, plus some new ones. Like Lost in Your Eyes, I wrote and started performing on the Out of the Blue tour. But I felt like I had a cushion of songs. And you know what? At that age, you just don't feel that kind of pressure anyway. That's the beauty of starting young. You know, I had no rent to pay. I wasn't like, oh my God, what if I never have a hit again? I was just like, this is great. This is fun.
You were in the moment.
I was in the moment.
Right.
Yeah.
And Lost in Your Eyes also went to number one on the Billboard Hot 100.
Yeah.
So back-to-back number ones
Yes.
with
And I didn't expect there to be such a,
Foolish Beat, right.
like, you know, I feel like it got leaked at one point and radio stations were giving their ID over it so that nobody else could grab it. And I was like, I had no idea that was going to happen. That was wild.
And then when the Electric Youth album,
Oh my God. What is that? Oh my God. See, I don't even.
where did you find that?
I don't know. That's fantastic. I have no
Let's
idea
read
who
it.
had this.
Hi to everyone. You read it. You wrote it.
Hi to everyone reading this. One album, a tour, a graduation, and a driving permit later.
whoop.
There I am in my 57 Ford Fairlane hardtop convertible. I bring you my new single, Lost in Your Eyes, and the album Electric Youth, coming soon. If you don't hear from me this month, it's because I'm home eating mom's pasta and watching MTV. See you in a bit. Oh my God, that is hysterical.
Those look like emojis.
I know
before
they're
emojis.
live, real, hand-drawn emojis.
Amazing.
That is hysterical.
Love
I don't
that.
think I've seen that since then. No idea I did that.
When Lost in Your Eyes came out, went to number one. The album Electric Youth also came out, went to number one, and you were the first female to ever simultaneously have the number one single and the number one album in the same week. Gary, is that right?
I don't even think I knew that.
Gary nods his head. It's like, yeah, sure, whatever you say. Which is
David
Deb Heads,
Falador, is that
correct?
right? My very
Correct?
first publicist is here too. Where's David? David.
David, is that
Yes.
right, David? The very first female artist ever to simultaneously have the #1 single and the #1 album in the same week.
I believe it is. I believe it is accurate.
That's amazing. I love this stat. In 1989, you shared the ASCAP Songwriter of the Year award
This is crazy.
with Bruce Springsteen.
It's crazy.
So did you get to duet together at the awards?
No, he didn't show up. I don't know if he liked sharing that with me. I'm sharing it with who? But yeah, that was pretty wild. That was
Amazing.
crazy.
Do you still have your ASCAP Songwriter of the Year
I
award?
I do.
That's something to be very proud of.
I do, and I have all the individual song plaques on the wall.
Because here's the other thing. We talk about music and then we talk about the music business. If you're writing all of your songs yourself, the copyrights are 100% yours, and you're not sharing the publishing with anyone else. You had a publishing deal with, you did or you didn't?
With what? With well, back in the day, I say, well, I was with EMI.
That's what I was gonna say, yeah.
And now I work with music sales.
Got it.
On my catalog. Yeah.
But was the EMI deal, was it a co-pub or was it an admin deal?
That was a Heather. You help me. I don't even. That was that was administrative. Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
owned your own copyright.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which 17-year-old having these massive hits, what I talked about before, when you hear a hit song now on the radio and it's got 17 writers, that means that the pennies that trickle in from streaming have to be split on the writer and the publisher side 17 ways. You didn't have to do that.
No. No.
So
And you know,
kudos to you.
when they come to you to clear stuff, because you know if they want to use something in an ad or what, I can't imagine like 17 people having to
Right.
sign off on
So
that
now if
stuff either.
Hallmark wants to use your song,
Yes,
easy
it's all very
one-stop
easy
shop.
breezy. It's
Yes.
very easy breezy. Yeah.
so Electric Youth, more stats, 2 times platinum, more hit singles. The title track, Electric Youth, No More Rhyme, both, again, big hits. Did you have fun? Was the second time around as fun as the first time around?
It was. That all felt like one big ride. That was like one big fast-moving train, honestly. I'll tell you what happened on the second album that was really cool. I got to mix at places like the Hit Factory where they call you and they say, what type of toilet tissue would you like? And what snacks? I think I worked on mixing that album with Bob Rosa, who's an amazing, amazing engineer. I was fueled by Cool Ranch Doritos and peanut M&Ms.
Perfect.
They had an endless supply of it for me at the studio. But really, like, everything kind of got upped a notch in that way, which I have to say was fun. It was fun. I wasn't just going to Brooklyn. I was coming into the city.
So we talked about Atlantic. When you signed, it was originally this $5,000 single. Now, with your #1 album and multiple hits, top 5 hits, multiple #1 hits, you must have become the biggest artist on the roster.
I don't know. I mean,
What
I don't
was
know. It
that
was-
like? I mean, you told
I
us.
had my own niche here for sure at the time. You know, I was the only young solo girl.
Were there any other? You told the Ahmed story about the Anita Baker pitch and the Santa Monica Boulevard Sheryl Crow line. Any other stories that you could remember that we may not know about Atlantic back in the late '80s, early '90s? Ahmed, Doug, Andrea, Bruce Carbone, anybody?
Oh my goodness,
Bruce-
Paul Cooper
Bruce-
out on the West Coast,
Yep,
actually.
Yep.
Who I still keep in touch with periodically, and he, Tony Mandich. But yeah, I'd go out and Paul Cooper would let me use he had his own driver, and he'd say, take the girls to Disneyland. It was me and my younger sister. And I mean, so, you know, there were those things like that. Just when you said that memory sprang to mind.
Yeah, and it's something you'll never forget.
No. And then, you know, being on the label with artists, like I remember going to see In Excess and Michael Hutchence. And Michael Hutchence was alive and he was amazing. And the fact that I had access to these artists and these concerts was amazing, you know, and kind of got to walk in on the arm of the executives who were always like, you know, like papas to me, you know. They were super respectful and, you know, really took me under their wing.
You know, it's amazing when you think about that time where we were just taking a little tour upstairs earlier before we came down here. And if anyone's been up on the 11th floor, which is one of the Atlantic floors, the perimeter of the floor is all posters, magnetic posters of our current artist roster. In the interior, it's all posters of 70 years of Atlantic Records history. And we break them down by decade. And so we were walking by the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, and we get to the 80s, and there's Michael Hutchins in INXS, and there's Phil
Twisted
Collins
Sister.
and Dee Snider right
Yeah.
next to Debbie.
Yeah.
And, you know, your legacy is literally part of the fabric upstairs.
It's wild. I mean, I've always said, like, you know, I always want to do new things, obviously, in my life and my career. But I've also often said, you know what? If I never do another thing again, I am part of this history, and it's just wild to me. That's the beauty of music. Once you have that hit, like I always laugh when people make fun of one-hit wonders. I go, do you know how amazing it is to have that one hit?
You know how many no-hit
I
wonders
mean,
there are?
Right, like just one. I mean, because usually one-hit wonders, their hit is so memorable. It's like they can't ever top it. So, you know, to have had that moment, you know, it'd be lovely to have another moment, or like we spoke about earlier, you know, composing a Broadway show, or, you know, writing for other people, you know, whether it's with 17 people or by myself or whatever. It'd be lovely to have that moment again, or for myself as an artist or whatever. But if I didn't, you know, just to have had that moment is so incredible.
And it's so funny because you say once that music is out there and it's for everyone to claim as their own, everyone has their own memories. You know, I was watching, I was lucky enough to get an advance of Wedding of Dreams, thank you so much. And watching it and hearing some of these old hits, you immediately just go back to where you were. I remember I was in college, student teaching. Getting a degree to be a high school English teacher, which is probably why I'm up here doing this. And I remember vividly being in the teacher's lounge talking about with one of the teachers in the school, who is this young girl with foolish beat? You know, and that came right back to me. I hadn't thought about
Wow.
that in 30 years.
That's so cool. Well, that's why I always feel that way. Like when, you know, if someone comes up to me on the street or wherever, and I now get it with like Hallmark fans that didn't even know my music, like I'll call them older gals, that'll come up to me in the airport. You play on that Hallmark show, Summer of Dreams. But, you know, yes, when people come up to me, it's usually in this really cool way with some anecdote about how the music was a part of the soundtrack of their life. And it never gets old hearing that.
A lot of my coworkers at Atlantic last week were telling me about the posters they had in their rooms of your music and how they were so excited to finally, as an
cool.
employee of Atlantic, get to meet you and remember the fan that they were
That's so
back then
cool.
when they were listening to your
That is
music.
so cool.
So a few more albums on Atlantic, Anything is Possible, Body, Mind, and Soul. Were these records you continued to write and produce on your own?
So, no, I actually, on Anything is Possible, collaborated with Lamont Dozier, which was
Amazing.
insane. He and I
Spoiler
literally...
alert, future guest, Rock and Roll High School coming this
Yes.
You heard it here first.
Oh, give him a big hug for me. Lamont is awesome. And being such a huge Motown fan and having performed his songs on tour and a big Motown medley I did and everything, that was incredible. The title track we did. And I don't think anyone would have ever pegged that to be a Lamont Dozier track. That's what was so cool, because it had a very current sound. And, you know, something Bruce had said earlier about, you know, labels having patience and sticking with their artists. I often think about this. So this album was very much a transitional album for me. It was me saying, who am I now? Much like anybody at 20 years old says, who am I now? You know, it wasn't total teeny bopper music. It wasn't where I was going next. It was right in the middle of something. And I think that everyone panicked because I was hitting bullseyes. And then this one didn't really hit the bullseye. And so that's when everybody, you know, Doug, Ahmed, and everybody said, oh my God, what are we going to do next? And in the panic, I think the music got kind of convoluted. And I think that I saw myself as this artist like a Billy Joel in the sense that, oh, they're going to allow me to have, you know, 7 albums, and one might not sell, and one might sell, and one might not sell. And they wanted everyone to sell. at that point because I was a pop star at that time. And so by the time we got to Body, Mind, Soul, I had submitted a bunch of songs that, it's funny that you were at SBK. Some of the songs were kind of Wilson Phillips-esque because if you think of Lost in Your Eyes, you can tell, like, I'm from the suburbs, I'm melodic pop, and it was really a continuation of that. But everybody was a little more into the urban thing at that time. And so everyone wanted me to kind of meld with the urban thing, but I'm like, when you think urban, you don't think like, yeah, Debbie Gibson from the streets of Long Island. Like, it's not really happening. But the theater girl in me was like, I can be versatile. I can do this. I can play the urban pop star. So, I was like, I'm going to do it my way, their way, my way, their way. And Sturkin and Rogers are awesome, and we had a phenomenal time. And I'm really glad in that intro you guys saw at the beginning, I did that song, Losing Myself Over You. Now, at the time, it was in this really lower register. It was very sultry, and I was 21 years old. And 21 back then was like 18 going on 21, not like it is now, which is 21 going on 35. So I was like a real 21 or even younger, trying to do this thing and play this role. It was like I was doing Gypsy Rose Lee in the video, but I was me. And so I think people got very confused. And I literally performed that song in Chile 4 years ago or whenever it was, 5 years ago. And I was like, I understand this song now. I can deliver this song now. And I couldn't back then. I emulated, so I delivered it, with a technical vocal and my idea of whatever that lyric, I'm losing myself over you meant, but I didn't know. And so I think that's where we lost that pop audience a bit. And Doug and Ahmet had very strong views of what they wanted me to be and how they wanted to promote it. And it wasn't congruent with who I was. And that's when I said, I need to walk away from all this for a minute and go do Broadway, because for me, Broadway will be a way for me to be pure and showcase what I do in another way.
Was it difficult leaving Atlantic, since Atlantic was your home, or was it
Very.
just another stop?
No, very. I was disappointed that I felt like they lost, the execs lost faith in me because of one missed bullseye. So I felt like, wait a minute, I'm still the girl who wrote those hits, and I still live in the real world, and I still know how to communicate with people, and I still know how to write a good song. So just wait, let it in my mind, art unfolds. It's not something, you can't put a gun to someone's head and say, write a hit that sounds like whatever, and have it be magical. I think those really inspired songs, and again, you know them when you hear them, when a Bruno Mars comes in with his latest whatever, and you go, I don't know what ethereal place that came from, but you know it, and then when people are writing something that they're like, hey, this sounds like a hit, right? Because that's always going to sound like a rip-off of a hit. Mm-hmm. And so I knew I didn't want to do that. And then Brian Koppelman ended up saying, I know you as a singer-songwriter, Carole King type, let's do that. And we did that. But, but in talking about the Atlantic days, yeah, it was heartbreaking, really. I will say Ahmet kept up with my career all the way up till his passing. And
Came and saw you on Broadway.
Came and saw me on Broadway, and he said, darling, you have become so many things. And I thought, like, I could cry to Ahmet Ertegun saying that to me, was amazing. And, and again, he continued to want to hear what I was up to as a songwriter, and he was just very nurturing. He was, he loved artists.
Greatest record man ever.
Mm-hmm.
So, film, TV, Broadway, most importantly, music, you've done everything. What's next? Obviously, September 8th, we know what's next.
I love that.
You don't live in Long Island anymore. You live in Vegas.
I live in Vegas. It's a whole long story about how I ended up out there. But I've been getting the New York bug since I'm back here. There's something about, I know these streets. I lived in Manhattan for 13 years. But yeah, there is new music that these guys have been hearing about for a long time. I have dealt with some health issues in the last 5 years that have just caused me to not be as ready as I want to be yet. And I know that the moment will happen, and it'll be like probably 6 weeks, and the whole album will be done.
Right.
And I don't think about where will I fit in the landscape, or where, because I think that I just have to do what I do.
Just be you.
Just be me, and then I always said, even with producing, it's let the song lead the way, let the music lead the way, and it'll tell you how you need to promote it or where you need to go. It could end up in a film soundtrack. It could end up as, I've often thought it would be fun to be a surprise feature on someone's record. That, I'm a huge Eminem fan. I've always felt like I could write a great piano Eminem hook, because the stuff I write a lot lately is kind of that haunting melodic stuff. So there is a new music chapter. I've composer on 2 musicals, one called The Flunky, one called Skirts. Would love to see those on Broadway. And I love scoring too. I co-scored a documentary, and Thomas Newman's probably my favorite. I could see doing that someday. I think in those types of arrangements, they're running through my head at all times. And so, yeah, there's a lot of stuff to do, and continuing my mentoring programs with young people. I think it's so cool. I did a recording boot camp the year Kanye did Love Lockdown, and we were out at Glenwood Play Studios, and all these kids are running around, and Kanye's got his big drum set up in there, and it was just such a real world, real deal experience for these kids. And we did like 15 songs in 15 days, and I had a track guy in a lounge doing stuff, and I love that. I love being able to give kids what I got out of, going into my garage without a song and coming out with one. So when I can help a kid do that, and they have their master in their hand to do, and by the way, people go, did you take their publishing when you do? I go, no. Actually, we had someone from ASCAP come in and talk to them, and we taught them how to hang on to their rights. And, I would say, go do what you want with the song, whatever.
You're really paying it forward. You're helping.
Yeah. Well, music, it's so interesting now because it's still a way artists make money, but it's also like a promotional tool too. It's like a weird, and I can ask you about that too. It seems like, look, there's a lot of music given away also, but music to me is something it should be available to everybody in some way. And there's a time and a place it's sold, and there's a time and a way it's shared. And so for these kids, it was, they didn't need to go get my permission to go use it.
Amazing.
Super fun.
So we have a few minutes for questions. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for you guys to ask Debbie, Deborah, whoever you'd like to speak to.
All three of us, like I said,
here.
very good therapists.
And we have a microphone in the audience. Does anyone have a question? Here we go. Here's our singer. Stand up, please.
Oh, hi. You also mentioned, like earlier, you were between Michael Jackson and a lot of other artists, but did you ever get a chance to meet him?
To meet Michael Jackson, yes, I did. Yeah, I met him a couple of times. I have this amazing photo of us in my home where I met him backstage in LA before his concert. And he said, oh, I just saw your concert on the Disney Channel. I watched it, and it was so good. And I was like, Michael Jackson was sitting home watching television? This is crazy. So, yeah, he was
What do you think of him as a person?
the word I was going to use was lovely. Such a lovely person. Just,
Amazing.
Yeah, just a magical person.
Yeah, and it's your songs that got you to that moment where, an icon, an idol of yours is now telling you how much he enjoyed watching your performance.
Right, crazy.
Question? Another question? In the front, over here. Wait for the microphone. Here you go.
If you could write for any artist now, who would you like to write for? If you could submit a song to someone to sing.
Oh my gosh, that is such a good question. I'm like going through the Rolodex of my like my iTunes mixes and my. You know, it's interesting. One artist that just came to mind was Carrie Underwood, just because I feel like, you know, again, someone who's got a little theatrical and super melodic, but then there's like a rawness there too. I have a song, Love is hard, hard on me, not what I want, but what I need. God, it cuts, will it bleed? Can I take this love so hard on me? And I always feel that song. I hear different artists and think, but I think Tina Turner, at this point in her life, could cut that song and have a hit. That would be a dream of mine, because she's always been such a huge inspiration of someone who had an act two at pretty much the age I am now. But that song, it could be her and it could be someone else, but I want to hear that song paired with the right artist. You know, there are artists like the Chainsmokers that I hear and I go, I would love to collaborate. I listen to just tons of current music, and like I said, I'm not one of these people that goes, because like, you know, people come up and they mean it as a compliment and they go, well, back when music was good, and I go, I'm in awe of music right now. I mean, I think that there's just such amazing artistry out there. Kelly Clarkson would be amazing. She's here on the label.
She is.
But, you know, to have a great, because I was never that kind of vocalist. So I think that's why those vocalists are coming to mind. I was always more of, in my mind, of a singer-songwriter vocalist, not a diva, you know, Aretha Franklin influenced vocalist. So to be able to write with that kind of range for somebody else would be really fun.
Another
Great
question? In the front?
Hello
Hi.
again.
How are you?
I'm good. Do you see a Vegas show in your future since you live out there now?
That's such a good question. Yeah, you know, there have been a lot of interest in me doing that, and again, with my health as it was, I put in the past, I didn't feel ready for that burst of energy at that moment. But yeah, I do see that happening for sure. I remember when my dad came to me. I love this. When Vegas was still, it wasn't the Vegas we know now. It still was a little bit like, if you're a has-been, you go to Vegas and you have a hit show. You know, it was like that moment before Celine. And I remember my dad saying, you need to play Vegas. You know, you have everyone come to you. And I go, Dad, seriously, you're putting me out to pasture in Vegas? You know, it's like, he was so ahead of his time on that one, you know. But I did the Harrah's run, you know, some years back. And so doing that one-woman show. But, you know, I saw Garth at the Wynn. I think it would be really fun to do that with a piano. When I saw Garth at the Wynn, it was just him and a guitar. Mm-hmm. So you know, look, we've got J-Lo and we've got Gwen Stefani, and I can do all the bells and whistles, and maybe I will, but I think it'd be kind of cool to do something different, do Vegas in a different way, and do that in the moment storyteller. You're never getting the same show twice thing. That'd be exciting.
All right. Book your tickets now.
Thank you.
How about one or two more questions as we wrap up over here?
Hi, Debbie. I love your music.
Thank
I
you.
love how creative you are and still writing the songs that you do.
Thank
creating
you.
music. I oftentimes imagine you, I love your voice, and I imagine you singing all types of songs, like covering other artists. And I was just wondering what songs you also enjoy singing that are not your own.
Oh, that's such a good question. You know, when I sit at the piano, I do everything from, like, you guys all saw my acoustic of Ibiza, right? I'll have to send that to you. Took a pill in Ibiza. And I came up with this piano riff that I forget is not actually a part of that song. And I go, oh, wait, I can use this and write something to it. But so I'll sit and a lot of times I'll take very current songs and do an acoustic.
And put yourself into it.
Yes.
That
And
song-
remind yourself what a great melody
Right.
that song has.
That song is an incredible song.
I don't know if he knows what he wrote. Like, again, and for someone who's an entertainer, kind of that really like melancholy depiction of life on the road or as a celebrity, all those things he tapped into, or just anybody who feels maybe separate from society or whatever. It's a brilliant song. But then I sit around singing like You Needed Me and The Rose and all those amazing 70s songs that lend themselves to the piano.
The amazing thing, we're talking about, kind of why are some songs big hit songs and why are some songs successful and others aren't, the one-hit wonder, the no-hit wonder. There's always just like this quirk of fate that is why a song would become a hit. That song, Ibiza, that Mike Posner song, if you heard the original version of that?
I did, and so, see, I didn't realize it was originally an acoustic. I discovered it like everyone as a dance song and thought that I was quite brilliant for turning it into an acoustic. And like, wow, this song really works stripped down. And then I found that hidden verse that,
Right.
and so, yeah, and then I went, oh, duh, he did it this way originally.
But the version that he did it in originally would never have been a hit. It was
Right.
too depressing.
Right.
It was too dour,
Right.
And the genius of sometimes there was a remixer who was able to bring the right levity to the despair in the lyric. And I think that's what made it was nominated for Song of the Year at the Grammy.
Yep, I agree. And because then I think I often think of that, about that with songwriting. It's like, you want to get a point across, you want to get a message across, but you want to sneak it out to people sometimes and put it right in a context that's palatable and familiar, so they're like, oh, and then before you know, that lyric is creeping up and sneaking up on them and moving them,
Totally.
you know.
We have time for one more question to
What
wrap
about
it up.
someone from Atlantic? Oh, yeah,
In the back.
in the back.
Question as to the songwriter. What's the most favorite part in songs that you like to write? Chorus, verse, or hook?
Oh, that's such a great question. I'm a bridge girl. You've heard of the bridge and tunnel crowd? I'm just of the bridge crowd. Because the bridge is the moment where you do anything. You're not in the structure anymore. You're not repeating a melody. You can go anywhere and you kind of do that suspenseful moment and then, resolve it. So I love me a good bridge. That's a great question.
There you go. So thank you so much for coming in and doing this.
Thank
and
you.
So much good luck with your friends at Hallmark September
Thank
8th for
you.
Wedding of Dreams. Everyone get ready to watch. Any final words of wisdom, advice to our Atlantic crew, our Warner Music crew, the Deb heads?
Oh, my goodness. Well, the Deb heads, you know how I feel. Thank you. I always say thank you for sticking with me all these years. It's amazing. What I love is that I don't have, a fickle group of supporters. I have supporters that are there for me, whether, they're loving the music this year or not. I sound like crap at one concert, or I don't, or they're in for the long haul.
Amazing.
Which is amazing. Their family. It's amazing. And for everyone at Atlantic, as spoken from an artist, I could not have reached the masses without people like you doing what you do. So thank you for your love of music and your love of artists. And always let it begin and end with that, because that's really what it's about. Like Pete said, it's about moving people through music beyond anything else. So I think if everything you do, whether, whatever you're doing in the art department, in radio promo, if it's all about, I want people to hear this song, I think you can't go wrong.
100%. Thank you so much, Debbie Gibson.
Thank you.